So we're going to learn how to dimension isometric blocks or shapes that you have inside of your drawing. This is kind of not necessary as the way things are going in your 3D programs, but this is one of those ways that if you do have an isometric and you want to show it and put dimensions on it, this is one of those examples of how to do that. Okay, so let's first start off by making sure AutoCAD is in isometric drafting. And I'm selecting the ISODRAFT button here. You can see that from my cursor I'm in isometric left. If you want to verify that, there's a little fly up next to it, and that tells you what isometric plane that you're working on. So let's start with the line, and I'll make sure ortho is turned on. Click here, and I'll go down a distance of 88. And let's see if I'm able to zoom out and I can still see my image. I'll go up a distance of 18. Going back this way, 88. And then I can use the close function. And what I like to do first is kind of create my isometric shape, and then I'll start slicing the portions off of it. Let's go ahead and switch to isometric right. You can hit the F5 button to cycle through them as well. And you can read on your command line which plane that you're on. Let's draw a line going this direction, 50. Let's go up a distance of 18, then back to this endpoint. Okay, so now we're getting to the parts to where we got to figure out how tall this is and how we're going to put these lines in between them. I know that this line from this distance up to the very top that I need to get to is at 56. So let's go to copy, select this line, pick a base point, and go up in the air 56. Next, I'm going to go to the copy command, and I'll switch back to isometric left. Select this line. A base point can be anywhere you want, since I'm going at a distance, and I'm going this direction, 38. And if we add the 38 plus 12, that should give us 50. Let's go ahead and extend these lines up to the top here. So I'll just use the regular extend command. I'll send these lines up to the top. I'll hold down the shift button while I'm in this command, and that will allow me to trim these lines away from here. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch back to isometric right. Let's go to copy, select this line, pick a base point. I'm going to go this direction, 28. And then we have to look at our 28 plus 12, in this case, which is at 40. Let's go ahead and copy this line up 56. So we're going to type it up 56, and I should have copied both of these together. But let's go ahead and copy, select this line, base point, 56. Just like we did before, extend. I'll extend these two lines up. I'll hold down the shift button, and I'll trim these lines. Okay. From here, I'll start copying lines. In this case, sometimes grips is a little bit easier to do this part in. So let's go ahead and use grips. I'll select this line, select that grip point, spacebar one time. I'm reading for the word move. Then I'll select copy. And then what I'm going to do is put these endpoints at this intersection, at that endpoint, and also this one in the back. I can put this one in the front as well. I'll have to come back and trim it later. Let's go back to using grips. So select this line, select this grip, spacebar one time or until you read the word move, choose copy. And I'll place these at this endpoint, these endpoints at the top, and the one on this side. Okay. Let's go ahead and complete a little bit of this by just drawing some lines to connect these two endpoints. And do the same on this one. Now, there are going to be some lines missing, but this will get us in the general direction of where we need to be. Let's go and use the trim command. And I'm going to start with this intersection here. So I'll start with this line far to the outside, and I'll click it in until I get it to stop where I want it. I'll do the same on this one. I can see that this line that's going all the way back only shows up at this location. So starting at the furthest point back here, I'll click these lines forward to this location. And then here along the top, I have kind of 4 lines going across each other. So I'll go ahead and trim off the middle part. Okay. Let's go ahead and escape out of this, and now let's put in some vertical lines. I'll use copy as well for this one, so I'll select this line, this top grip, spacebar one time, or until you read the word move, then select the word copy, then place it at that endpoint, this one on the back side, and it shows up here. Okay, let's escape out of that and go ahead and trim. So I'll trim this line off here, trim this portion up to here. Okay, let's go ahead and either create a line here or copy it. I'll just copy this line. Remember the space bar one time and then select the word copy. And then select that endpoint. Let's go ahead and trim this. Okay, so with our basic shape created, let's go ahead and create the part that we kind of trimmed off. So what I mean by that is I'm going to draw a line going up this direction. And once again, I'm still working in isometric right. So I'm going to draw a vertical line going up this direction. And then I'll draw a line from this endpoint coming this direction. You can either use fillet or trim to take off the extra parts. Look like I forgot one line there. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this line over to here. So I'll select here, space bar, and then choose copy and place it at this location. Let's go ahead and copy this line. Now I'll use the regular copy. This endpoint to this endpoint. Let's finish this by drawing some lines from this endpoint going to this endpoint. Let's copy both of these lines from this endpoint to this endpoint. I'll create a line going across from this endpoint to this one. And then I'll finally do the back portion of this. So I'll create a line. Let's go ahead and switch to isometric left. Going this direction. I'll switch back to isometric right. Let's complete a line going this direction. Trim. Let's finish connecting these with the lines that we're missing. So we have a line missing here. And I'll create a vertical one just going right down underneath here. And come back and trim it. Okay, so now we have our main shape, and then we have a skeleton of what's been cut out. Let's go ahead and cut out the other portions. So let's draw a line going from this endpoint to this endpoint. And now I need to create a line at 45 degrees going this direction. So first thing I'll do is I'll switch over into isometric left. Start with the line command, and I'm going to draw a line going this direction. Let's make it 20. And then I'll go up a distance of 20. And you can choose any number that you want, just make sure both of the numbers are the same. Once I connected to this endpoint, that is a 45 degree line faced on this location or in this isometric view. Let's go ahead and move this line from this endpoint to that location. I'll delete this. And then let's extend that line to this location. So I'll go to extend. This time I'll give it a boundary edge and select this line, enter, and then I'll send that up to that location. Let's complete this by drawing a line from here, going back to this endpoint. And now we can actually start seeing the cutaways of our shape that we have created. So now I can create lines from this intersection to this intersection, and one from this intersection going down to this intersection. Let's do the same on this side. I have a line from this intersection to that one, and a line from this intersection to this one. Let's go ahead and trim those lines back now that we don't need them. So I'm going to trim this line in here, and I'll trim here to here. Let's do the same on this side, so we can trim these lines here to here. And then we'll trim from here to here. Okay, so this is our basic shape that we need to create. And just to make things a little bit more different, let's go ahead and make some of these lines red. So you can select them, select in this drop down, and change them to red. Choose match properties, and match all of these other little outside lines, just so we know which ones are which. Okay, now this line here that's going in between here to here actually should be one of our black lines, or white if you have a black background. So let's go ahead and break at those points to create those lines. I'm going to select and modify, then I'm going to tell it to use the break at a point command. You select the object that you want to break at the point, and then you select the point. I'll use that command again. Break at a point. I'm going to select this portion here, and I want it to break at this point. What that allows me to do is when I use match properties, I can select this line, and now I can select that one. Okay, I'll continue and do that around the other ones. So break at a point, select the line, and then select the point. And this is one of those commands you cannot hit the enter button and go back and use it, because it'll bring you back to the break command. So I use break at a point on this one, select this line, then that endpoint. Break at a point, select this line, this endpoint. Break at a point, this one to this one. And two more times. So I have to break this line at that location, and then break at a point and select this line at that location. Okay, so I use match properties, select the black line, then I'm going to select all the other lines that I want to change colors to. Okay, and let's go ahead and take care of this line here at the bottom. So I'll draw a line from this intersection going to that intersection. Next, I'll trim them back. So I'll trim it back from here to here. Use break at a point. Select this line at that point. And then I'll use it again to break this line at that point. Use match property, select a black line, and then change these two lines to be black. Then use match properties one more time, select a red line, and make this line red. Okay, so that's everything that we need to do to complete the drafting portion of our drawing. Let's go ahead and insert our title block in. Okay, before I bring in my title block, there's a reason why I have some of these lines red and some of them on the black or white color, depending on your background. And I wanted to show you a command that you can select these all at once. Let's go ahead and open our properties window, and I'm just going to select any of these lines. Do a right click and select properties. Okay, I'll put a window around all of this. And then I want to use the quick select option. Choose quick select. You should get a dialog box to appear. And now I can specify in my selection, how do I want to select the objects? So I want to select it by the properties of color that is equal to red. And I want to include that in my selection. Once I select OK, you'll see only the ones that are red are highlighted. This is really beneficial to add to a new layer or some of that nature. In this case, I think I will do that. So I'm going to go to Layer Properties. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'll call it Outline. Let's go ahead and change that color and make it actually red. Go ahead and close this. Select all your objects again. Choose Quick Select. You're going to specify it from a color that is equal to red. Select OK. Now over here in the tree, I'm going to select in the Layers drop down and choose Outline. And then underneath the color, I'm going to select the drop down and tell it to do by layer. I'll escape twice. Now what I can do with this is that I can turn off those layers, and you can see that now I have my shape created the way I want it. Turn that back on. It looked like I actually double clicked on it and made it the current layer, but go back in the drop down, choose 0 layer as my current layer. Okay, and one of the other options I can use is I can turn this one back on, and I can freeze this layer, and it's going to give me a message that's saying I have the current layer frozen. So I'll go ahead and turn that off. And what I can use this for is that if I decide to use overkill, now I can select the objects that I want to use in overkill. So if some of these lines are half lines or double lines, I could clean them up here. And then let's turn this back on. And turn the outline back off. And then use overkill again. And this will clean up your drawing. So if you have any overlapping lines or things of that nature, it will have all these lines connected for you. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the outline back on. Okay, now we're ready to bring in our title block. So let's use Classic, Insert, Browse, and let's use a B size for this one. Okay, and then I have my title block in at a small size. Let's go ahead and increase the size of this one. And if we remember some of our scale factors, it kind of depends on what size or what units you're going to use. Let's try making this one 16. Let's go ahead and place our drawing on the inside of our title block. And I'm just moving it. You're going to have to turn your ortho off. Okay, with a scale factor of 16, that tells me that if I'm going to use the annotation scale, that I should be using the one that says 3/4 equals a foot. Once I have that selected, do a regen and hit enter. Okay, if you're going to dimension isometric drawings, there's kind of a couple of things you need to do first. And the first thing is that you're going to have to create a couple of text styles. You can type in ST, or you can select this icon, or if you happen to be on the annotation tab, you could select where it says text, this little arrow here. Okay, I'm going to create an annotative one. So I'm going to go and create new. Name of my style is going to be, let's call it ISO 1. Now, it has an annotative option next to it. If you didn't want to do that, you can uncheck it here. But in our case, we're going to leave it the way it is. Never, ever put anything in this box unless you're sure that that text height is going to always be that. I usually like to leave it set to 0. All of the other things I'm going to leave alone except for the obliquing angle. I will change it to 30. Go ahead and apply this. Highlight ISO 1. And choose new and make one that's called ISO 2. Okay, with ISO 2, you're going to make the obliquing angle -30. Go ahead and apply that and then close. Okay, so if you look at this, you should have two styles. And I'm just kind of recapping for you. You have an ISO 2 at a -30. And you have ISO 1 at 30. Okay. The next thing I need to do is that I need to show you how to put the dimensions on to make them read in isometric. Okay. So, before we do that, let's go ahead and change our dimension style to dim. Let's go ahead and update our dimension style. Tell it that we're going to use annotative, so double click on it. Modify. In the text box, instead of using the standard, I'm just going to set it to the annotative one. Underneath the fit, we don't have anything to worry about here since we have our annotative scale set. And then here our primary units are whole numbers. Okay, and then close. Okay, in order to put the dimension of 50 on the bottom of this one, you cannot use any of your linear dimensions. You have to use the line dimensions. I'll select this endpoint to this endpoint, and I'll drag downward. In order to change the rotation angle of your extension lines, there is an option that's called oblique. So I'll choose oblique, select my dimension, enter, and then you have to tell it what angle that you want that line to be. Well, that line goes vertical. I can type in 90. Now you can see that those lines are obliqued in that direction. As for the text, select your text. Come to where it says text rotation angle. And with this one, you're either going to set it to 30 or -30. I'll try 30 first. And now you see that it's rotated that direction. And then I'll scroll up to the top, well, back down to the fit one. And then I'm going to choose either ISO 1 or ISO 2 underneath my text style. You can see that ISO 1 is the one that I'm going to need to stand this up. Now you have your text standing up. Okay, so let's do the next one. Let's try a line dimension. Aligned, and I'll select this endpoint. And now you can't go up to this endpoint because it's not in line with it. So I'll shift and right click and choose intersection. Select this line. And then this line. Now I have my dimension. Choose oblique. Select your dimension. Enter. Give it the angle, 90. Now I could have did both of those at the same time if I have my 12 dimension, and I'll do that on the top one. Select your dimension. Go down to where it says text. Give it a rotation angle. In this case it's going to be 30. And then you're looking for the text style. It's either going to be ISO 1 or ISO 2. And ISO 1 looks like the one that it has standing up. Let's do the next one, align dimension. And we're going to start from an intersection. So shift and right click. This intersection to this intersection. And then we want it to also go to an intersection. So shift and right click again. Choose intersection. Now I'm choosing this line and this line. And I'll place it. I know some of you are wondering if I can use the match properties. And I'll show you what happens when you use match properties. Select this dimension as my source. And then I want this one as my one that I want to copy off of it. So it doesn't do exactly the way you want it to do it. And I'll undo that. Okay, so I have to use these steps to get it to match the other ones. So I'll select this one. I'll choose oblique. Give it an angle, in this case, which is 90. Select your dimension. In your properties window, scroll down until you find the word text. Underneath rotation, 30. And then you have to give it which one of the styles that we created before. And it's ISO 1. Now this one kicked to the outside. You could select it. And then select the grip on the text. And then place it right back at that midpoint. And next I'll select this grip. And then I'll put it on top of that one. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our vertical lines or our vertical dimensions on this one. So I'll do a couple of them at the same time. I'll go to aligned. Select these two dimensions. Those two endpoints. Then I'll use aligned again. This endpoint to this one. And you can see that I did miss that endpoint. I'll try that one again. So from that endpoint to that endpoint goes that way. Let's choose oblique. I'm going to select both of these dimensions. Next I have to give it its obliquing angle. In this case I want it to be 30. Select both of your dimensions. Go over into your properties and find the word text. Underneath text rotation, give it a rotation angle. This is 30. And then in the annotative one, you can choose which one makes it look right. In this case, it's going to be ISO 1. Okay, now next let's go ahead and do our top dimensions. And it looks like our title block is a little bit too small for this, but it's okay for the example portion. If you want to tighten these up a little bit, you can. Meaning that I can pull this up just a hair so it's not leaking over my title block. Okay, so let's do the ones at the top. So I'll choose the line. I'll go ahead and place my 88 dimension first. Then I'll do the 38 dimension, which is from here to here. And then finally, let's do our dimension of 12 from here to here. I'll just go ahead and click at this endpoint just to lock them in line for right now. Next, I want to choose the oblique and angle. Select my 3 dimensions. What angle do I want this extension line to be at? Well, it's the same as this one. In this case, 30. Select all 3 of your dimensions. Go over to the properties. Find text. I'm looking for the rotation. Now you can see in this one, 30 is kicking us kind of the other way. So when you see it doing that way, usually just type in -30. So you have 2 choices in my opinion, 30 or -30. Next, I want to go and take a look at the text style. You can see ISO 1 is the one that we're going to use. ISO 2, it will stand it, making it look straight up. So I'll choose ISO 1. Okay, let's go ahead and scoot this down, just so it's not leaking outside of our title block. Okay, just to keep things consistent, I'll select this one, select the grip, and place it on that endpoint. Let me go ahead and I missed the endpoint there. Okay. Then I have to move in my 18 dimension, so I'll select that one. Then select the grip on the with the arrow, just move it forward. Okay, now we have one that has an angle. And this one is the only time that you're going to have to overwrite text or overwrite a dimension, which is a huge no-no in most of your other occasions. But this is one of those exceptions. So I'll choose angular, select this line to this line. Then I'll place my dimension. You can go ahead and select your text. Come down to the word text. Your rotation angle. Set that equal to 30, and you can see that this one goes the other direction. So I'll type in -30. Then you can choose which style that you want to use, ISO 1 or ISO 2. And in this case, ISO 2 is the one that I'll choose. Next, I'll use the edit command. So I'm just typing ED, enter. Select the text that I want to edit. I'm just going to hit the delete button, and that's going to take away all that text. Type in 45%D. Click somewhere and then escape. Okay, so that's all your isometric dimensions if you have to dimension something isometrically. On this one, let's go ahead and fill in our title block. So select your title block. The scale for this one, and I think our scale factor was sitting at 16. So that's going to make it, oh, and I can look down here at the bottom. And that's another reason why you can have your scale set to annotated. And I'll type in exactly what I see. 3/4 inches equals 1 foot dash 0 inches. I'll call this one isometric. And I would put dimension. I don't know if I have enough room, so I'll just type in isometric dim. And go ahead and make sure you fill in your name. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed watching this one. As you can see, we created an isometric, and now we're able to put dimensions on it. This is one of those things that's a dying art. With many of your 3D programs, you don't even have an option to dimension your isometrics, and I just kind of saw something that was sticking out. Let's go ahead and put that right in the midpoint of that one. But if you, in any case that you're creating or you have an isometric in AutoCAD, you can dimension it if you do create one. So I want to thank you for sticking with me and watching this one.